Greetings, beautiful ones. This is Dr. Akua. I hope everybody is well today. Thank you for joining the Doula House Houston and also the Doula House Ghana. We are presenting today the Lactation Cookies Baking webinar. So those of you who are supporting moms, those of you who are working hard with the women in your life, or with the work that you do, helping them to feed their children the best that nature has to offer, this webinar is for you today. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in and get started. So once again, welcome to the Doula House Houston and also the Doula House Ghana. And this is Dr. Akua Gray with A Life of Peace Wellness Education Institute. All right, so the first thing that we'll look at is the lactation cookie treat. It is truly a treat. I mean, everybody likes cookies. Um, well, I guess we can't necessarily say everybody likes them, but most people do like cookies. You know, the cookie industry is a very large industry. And there are lactation cookies out there on the market that are sold in stores. Um, However, I really think that the best lactation cookies are made at home with love. So, if you are working with mothers, especially as a doula or a midwife, and you want to give mom something special to help motivate her with her breastfeeding, as well as to ensure that she's getting a little bit of extra nourishment in her postpartum eating lifestyle, then the lactation cookie treat is one of those best practices that we can give mom. You know, there are plenty of options when it comes to lactation cookies. And so let's explore some of those as well. Now, when we talk about lactation cookies being nutritious, we want you to know that for mommy and baby, it promotes milk production. That is the point of them being called lactation cookies. They are very protein rich, as well as being a good supply of B complex vitamins, which helps from everything dealing with the blood, the circulation, as well as the mood of mom. And then it's very fiber rich. So with it being fiber rich, we actually with it being fiber rich, we actually have a good digestive system nutrient, okay, because fiber definitely will help to eliminate any type of constipation that mom may be having. It is also iron rich. And of course, you know, in postpartum, moms do still need to take their prenatal or postpartum or multivitamins, whatever they were taking at the very beginning of the pregnancy and throughout the pregnancy. And one of those main factors in the extra nutrients is the iron, because that helps with the production of the blood, not only for mom, but also baby. And iron-rich breast milk is also a vital component in good, healthy feeding for baby as well. And then, of course, with a little bit of oils, such as in your chocolates, if you're using chocolate chips, or if you're using coconut oils, then you are definitely giving mom a component of good fat. Now, your basic ingredients in your lactation cookies Of course, it's just like any other cookie. So if you've ever baked any kind of cookies before, you know that you're going to be using flour, and we'll get to the how much of each one of these ingredients a little later. We have a nice video that we're going to watch on how to actually put all of your ingredients together. Now, depending on mom's eating lifestyle, she may take dairy and she may not take dairy. So you always have to take that into consideration because many mothers do have the vegan and the vegetarian lifestyle, and not everybody wants the milk, the butter, and the eggs, and also the sugar, because some moms are limited on the amount of sugars that they take in too. So your basic ingredients are your flour. You can either choose the cow's milk or either a nut milk. And very good nut milks that I have found that works very well with the lactation cookies are the almond milk and also the oat milk. Okay. Now, when it comes to sugars and adding just a little bit of sweet to the lactation cookies, Um, the brown sugar seems to be the preferred. However, you could use white sugar. And then also other alternative sweeteners could be something like agave. The monk fruit is also an alternative, and so is stevia. You can also use honey if mom is okay and doesn't have any reactions to honey. But when you use the liquid sweeteners, you have to use them in very small amounts because that can affect the consistency of the cookie. Okay. Now, next, to kind of give it a little bit of thickening properties, you're going to use your butter. Again, that is dairy. So if by chance mom doesn't take in dairy, then you want to use your vegan options. There are vegan margarines that are out there on the market, as well as, one of the very easy ones that really makes the cookies taste good too are the coconut oils. All right. And then, of course, if you want a light and fluffy cookie instead of a kind of firm and hard cookie, then you can add the egg or an egg substitute as an option. Now, from a vegan point of view, one of the egg substitutes would be ground flaxseed or psyllium husk in the powder. Those would be two very good. And then, of course, on the market, they do have vegan egg replacements as well. So, again, considering your mom's lifestyle will depend on the basic ingredients that you offer. Okay. Now, here we have some of the special ingredients, and this is what is going to make your lactation cookies unique to you, is your special ingredients. Now, one of the best ingredients that is really good for mom, whether she is lactose intolerant, whether she is vegan, or if she's an omnivore and she's okay with animal products, is the brewer's yeast. And that brewer's yeast is so very high in magnesium, in iron, in the vitamin B complexes. So all of those nutrients that we talked about that were good, you will find them in the brewer's yeast. Now, one thing I want you to be aware of is oftentimes when you go to the supermarket is not selling brewer's yeast. They are selling just like the basic um, yeast that's used for helping your bread to rise. Okay, that's not the one that we're talking about. You actually have to go and ask, usually at the health food store. So places like Yes Market, if you're in the Midwest, or Whole Foods, pretty much all over the United States. If you go in and you ask for brewer's yeast, then they're going to take you to the health food section in order to find your brewer's yeast. Now, if by chance you live in an area where there is not a health food store, then you can always go online on Amazon, on Whole Foods online, and have them to just ship you the brewer's yeast. It's not expensive and it's pretty well known, but you've got to be in the right arena to find it. Now, some other special ingredient options that you can use in your lactation cookies would be chocolate chips. You can use the sweet ones, you can use the dark chocolate, you can use the milk chocolate, you can use the white chocolate. So it just depends on what kind of flair in the cocoa, the chocolate aspect that you would want to add to your lactation cookies. And again, consider mom's eating lifestyle because if you're going to be preparing these for vegan or vegetarian moms, you want to make sure that you get the dark chocolate that doesn't have the milk in it. Then you have your nut butters. Some moms do like a little bit of almond butter or peanut butter or even cashew butter inside of the cookies. Just depends on what kind of variety you want to give or what mom's preference is um, in terms of what she likes and what she doesn't like. You can also include nuts. Two of the most favorite nuts when it comes to the lactation cookies are walnuts and pecans. Okay. Of course, if she likes a peanut butter lactation cookie, then of course you can always put peanuts on top. Your seeds are also good. So if you're making like a lemon poppy seed, or if you just want to sprinkle a few sesame seeds on top for mom, if she's good with that. Oats, because you can also make a oatmeal lactation cookie. And that one too seems to be a favorite, adding in those raisins, those pieces of fruits. And then what is really nice is to have dip options, okay? And what we mean dip options is like a nice little sugar glaze on top, or either dipping them in chocolate, okay, and letting them kind of just the chocolate just dry on top and the cookies inside. All of those are really, really nice options. You can also do a very nice strawberry swirl where you take strawberries, put them in the blender with a little bit of agave nectar or honey or any of the syrups. You could also use maple syrup and you blend it. It's best to do that in a bullet because you're never making a large amount. So if you have one of those little small bullets, then that would be good. So you just blend the agave and the organic fruit up because you could do it with mangoes, you could do it with strawberries, you could do it with peaches, um, you could do it with pineapple. Okay, grapes and apples, not so much. In fact, not at all. But any of the berries, the blueberries, very, very simple way of topping them off with a nice syrup would be agave, blend it up with the fruit, drizzle it on. Moms absolutely love it. Okay. All right, the next option is your baking equipment. What is it that you're going to need in order to bake cookies if you've never done them before? So I always say start off with a cute apron because you might find yourself wanting to wipe your hands. So get yourself a nice cute apron that'll add to the atmosphere of the job that you have to do. Get yourself a mixing bowl. More than likely, you're going to need a medium to a large mixing bowl. Your spatulas should be the non-stick or either your mixing spoon should probably be one of the wooden mixing spoons. Okay, sometimes the stainless steel being used on plastic may scrape. So I do not recommend stainless steel to plastic bowls. Instead, you want to use the natural soft spatula or either the wood mixing spoon in order to not get any plastic residue inside of your cookies if you're using the plastic. But you can also opt for glass mixing bowls too. Just depends on your preference. You're going to need some baking pans, and that is definitely going to be your choice. So you've got to go to your local variety store and you've got to go to the baking section because there are stainless steel baking pans, there are non-stick baking pans, there are aluminum baking pans, there are ground stone baking pans, there are Teflon baking pans. So again, you've got to go and look and see what kind of baking pans you are deciding that you want because there's a variety. Now, for me, I like to use glass and I also like to use the stone baking pans because those are made more out of the natural ingredients. Okay. So that's just my preference. But by all means, you have to go with what's affordable for you and also what's available in your particular area. Now, for the cookie sheets, you can decide whether you want the cookie sheets or not. If you get the right kind of pan, your cookies won't stick. But if you have that kind of pan that rust, the regular metal pans, I would definitely suggest the baking cookie sheets that you put your cookies right on top of, put them in the oven, take it out, pull the shake the sheet a little bit, cookies come right off. Okay. And then one really neat thing to have, but it's not mandatory, is the cooling rack. And basically, it's just a small rack that's made out of little metals that are crisscrossed. And you put the cookies on top so that they can cool off fairly quickly. Again, that is an optional thing. You could actually just leave them right on the cookie sheet and um, let them harden up a little bit because most of the cookies, when they come out of the oven, they're still a little soft from the baking. But then once you let them sit and cool for about 30 minutes to an hour, they get a little bit hard and they are ready for eating. Okay, next are your baking tips. One thing I would say, if you're going to use a recipe, if you're not a baker, use a recipe and use true measurements of your recipe. One thing you don't want to do is if it says 2 cups of flour, you throw in 2 3/4 cup. That's going to throw off the whole taste of the cookie. So if it calls for 2 cups of flour, measure 2 cups of flour. If it calls for a tablespoon of coconut oil, then make it a tablespoon of coconut oil. Always use true measurements of your recipes. Now, one thing about cookies, and at our holistic doula retreats that we have in Texas and Georgia and in Ghana, um, we bake cookies. And one of the things, the ways that we have fun with it is we just give everybody the recipe and a few little extra ingredients and just let everybody go at it. Now, for those people who have never baked cookies before, it's always an interesting result because sometimes one cookie spreads all over the whole baking sheet. They come out so thin that you can't even lift them off of the baking sheet. So it's really interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure and give you all a tip, and that is to make your batter thick. So if it calls for a half a cup of milk to 2 cups of flour, only put that half a cup of milk in. And what you want to do, and I really like this picture of Luna here because she's got her hands in her batter. She's putting all that good energy and love into it. So you can use your spatula, you can use your spoon, just depends. But for the most part, just put your hand in it and just churn it and mash it and put it all together. When we watch the video in just a few moments, you're going to see how, you know, the lady does it with the spatula and the mixing and everything. But again, sometimes they say you just got to put your hands in it. And that's how I prefer to make mine. I want it well mixed. I want it um, nice and thick. And sometimes the spoon just doesn't get it when it comes to mixing it very, very well. Okay, so make sure and make your cookie batter thick because when you put it in on the cookie pan, on the baking pan, and you make your little balls, then those balls are going to flatten out and spread out a little bit to make your cookie. Now, if you make it too thin, it's just going to be a flat mess. So always remember to make it thick. Now, when you're choosing the size of your cookies, always remember that small mounds make small cookies. So if you make a mound about the size of your forefinger and your thumb together, okay, like just a little bit bigger than a quarter, then you're going to have small cookies. But if shape it up to where you have a nice little mound, then you're going to have bigger cookies. So think in terms of what size cookie you want to have and make your mounds either small, medium, or large. And then one detail that I have learned the hard way when making cookies for my moms is you got to watch your cookies. Do not trust your timer or your oven to just go away and come back. You need to stay around the kitchen and make sure that you watch your cookies because even though the recipe says bake it for 12 minutes, sometimes depending on your stove, it may only take 7 minutes for your cookie to get ready. Even on the temperature that they noted, which is usually around 350 degrees for most recipes, then you've got to watch your cookies because the last thing you want to do is burn the bottom of your cookies and then you have to start all over again because mom is not going to appreciate burnt bottom cookies. So make sure that you watch those cookies while you bake. And the most important tip when it comes to baking cookies is bake with love. You are putting your positive, glowing, vibrant energy into these cookies that are going to be for mom, and not only for mom, but baby, and not only for mom and baby, but when you show up with cookies at mom's house, dad's gonna want some, okay? The other children are gonna want some. So by all means, make sure that you put lots of love and care into baking your cookies. All right, so let's go ahead and watch the video. This one is like one of my favorite videos that I always show at the holistic doula training classes that we have. So it's going to be just a few minutes and then we'll get a few more points on it.
The heads up, this recipe is doubled from Liv B's recipe. I'm a mom and I don't have time to make them once a week. So I made enough for 2 weeks. So here we go. So you're going to start with 2 cups of sugar and 2 tablespoons of blackstrap molasses. You don't have to add the blackstrap molasses. I just find that it adds a lot of moisture to the cookies, and also it's packed full of great minerals and nutrients that your body needs, especially as a breastfeeding mom. So I added that. Also, this is basically how you make brown sugar. So if you wanted to add brown sugar instead, you could, but I just like to make it myself because I know what's going into it. I know that the ingredients are good ingredients. So, and I'm just mixing this by hand because it's kind of a pain in the butt to mix it with a whisk or anything like that. I'm sure you saw I started mixing it with a uh, spatula, but it just doesn't work. So after you're done mixing that up, go ahead and rinse your hands because your hands are going to be real sticky. And then you're going to add a cup of coconut oil. I know this seems like a lot, but I'm made enough for 2 weeks. So I'm not eating like 5 cookies at the same time. I'm making them and stretching them out. So, if you think about it like that, it's not too bad. So once you get that all incorporated, you're going to make sure that you really incorporate this part really well, because you don't want like pockets of oil inside of your cookies because it's going to be an inconsistent bake. So make sure that you do that real well. And then you're going to add in a half a cup of any sort of plant milk. If you're not doing this vegan, you can add butter instead of the coconut oil and regular milk instead of the plant milk. But and then here I'm just adding in all of my dry ingredients and mixing them together beforehand so that the leavening agent gets distributed really evenly. And that was 4 cups of regular flour and 2 teaspoons of baking soda and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And the yeast is going to be brewer's yeast, and that was 6 tablespoons. And then I just added the 1 tablespoon of vanilla and just a tiny sprinkle of cinnamon because I just like the taste of it. And then you're going to just incorporate the wet and dry ingredients. And I just did this like in portions so that it didn't get lumpy. So it was just easier to incorporate. You could just dump it all in and mix it together if you wanted, but I prefer to do it that way. And so you're just going to go ahead and add a little bit more. Make sure it's really thorough. And you do not want to have chunks in this. So you don't want to have pockets of flour in your baking because then you're going to get pieces of flour that just taste gross. So that's why I usually do it in the sections, just FYI. Yes, apologies if you hear my baby. She's teething right now and she is just chewing on her hands. So you might hear some strange noises. And if you do, then that's just my pumpkin. She's just chewing on her hand. Oh, also you could add nuts to this if you want. My husband doesn't like nuts. But you could add that if you want. And that was just a half a cup of oats that went in there. And I actually prefer more oats, so I added more oats. Also, I don't think I said how many cups of flour. And so that was 2 cups of flour. So when you're doing high elevation baking, you usually have to add a half a cup or a fourth of a cup per recipe added flour so that it rises correctly. So what I did instead of adding extra flour is I added in some oats to soak up some of that moisture, that added moisture. So if you're high elevation and you don't want to add the oats, just don't add the oats, and then you don't have to alter the recipe in any other way except for just leaving the oats out. Like I said, I'm going to have the description, or in the description box, I'm going to have the non-high elevation measurements in the bottom. And so now I'm just cutting up some chocolate for my chocolate chips. I like to do it in chunks instead of buying chocolate chips. I really like dark chocolate, and it's hard for me to find a dark chocolate that has minimal sugar because I just really don't. I like a little bit of the bitterness in there. So I think it kind of takes away some of the sweetness from the sugar in the cookies. But you could use whatever you want. And once you get that all mixed up, you're just going to scoop them out onto the pan. I really like using a baking sheet like this. This is a Pampered Chef baking sheet that is made out of the stone. I find the stone sheets work significantly better than the tin ones because they really lock in the moisture. And so you get a nice fluffy cookie that doesn't get taste dry in the middle. It stays moist. The middle stays moist. So, but if you don't have that, you can just use a non-stick pan, or if you use a regular pan, I would definitely suggest either greasing the pan or putting some sort of non-stick on it so that it doesn't stick, because you don't want to crumble those beautiful cookies that you've just spent so much time making. So, and here they're baked out of the oven, and you're going to bake them in the oven for 10 to 12 minutes, depending on what elevation. And you just want to make sure that they look brown and that they don't have any shininess on the top, that they looked baked through. And yeah, this is what they should look like. They should be fluffy. They should be soft and just delicious looking. Just want to eat those right now. It was really hard for me not to eat a whole bunch of them because yum, they're really good. Here's just a close-up of what they should look like. They should be cracked and just look baked, basically baked through really well. And here's another even closer close-up so that you guys will want to make these cookies. Yeah, and so there you go. I cooked mine a little over, but you could cook them for a little bit less time if you wanted a softer cookie. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel.
Right. So that is kind of like an overview of how we do the cookies.
What new stuff?
And I always say, once and if you're gonna start doing these for the first time, you're going to find a way to perfect your recipe. Because what I've found is even though you have a recipe, let's say that recipe doesn't come with like cherries and you want to put cherries inside, then it's definitely perfectly fine to do that. But putting those cherries inside also may alter what the original recipe had in terms of consistency for that particular cookie. So you will find your happy medium when you put together your own recipe based on the recipes that you are using, that are already out there. And, you know, I specifically chose this little monster cookies because I want you all to have fun. Every cookie doesn't have to be just a plain old chocolate chip looking cookie. spice it up, make it look cute, especially if you know the children are going to be enjoying the cookies as well. So here are some of your postpartum gift ideas and just kind of a sample of how you can, make your lactation cookies unique. You can go plain and simple if you like, but like I said, just have fun with it. So some of the postpartum gift ideas, if you're going to be taking mom cookies to encourage her in um, in her breastfeeding, you can take a cookie square pan, where you've just laid out the whole cookie like a sheet, and then you cut it into little squares like brownies. Those are always very nice, and you don't have to take it out of the pan. Then you can also do some bagged bundles where you tie a nice little ribbon on top, or you can do a cookie tin, and those are always nice, especially with little ribbons wrapped around it. And you can also do the little cookie boxes as well with the little see-through window on the top, but always that nice little uh, ribbon, or putting it in a basket with the other goodies that you're taking to mom in postpartum. All right, so that is the end of our presentation today. I want to thank you all for joining us. The video will be available on our YouTube channel. And I also want to remind you that the Doula House is designed to help support maternal health initiatives for better birthing experiences in all of our communities. So we give these free webinars every other month, and we sometimes we do have door prizes to give away this time. However, we are asking for donations. So if you enjoyed this video, I would love for you to take out some time today to um, to type in the website www.paypal.me/a-life-of-peace, or if you Cash App, you can just Cash App A Life of Peace and make a donation to the Doula House. We help lots of moms. We train doulas. We donate to birthing centers, as well as donating to maternity wards here in the Ghana area. And we just want to keep the awareness that, maternal health is everybody's health, because without mothers and babies being born, then the world literally would come to an end. So again, I want to say thank you all for joining me, whether you are watching the video or whether you have tuned in live. I truly appreciate you all coming forth, and have fun baking your cookies and enjoying your postpartum time with mom, baby, and family. Peace and blessings, beautiful ones. You all have a great evening, afternoon, or morning, depending on where you are in the world. Peace and blessings.